Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you had a great first session, and I'm really excited to have you here in the Study in Canada session. So my name is Lydia Palmer. I'm going to be talking quite a bit about the opportunities and experiences that we offer in Canada, your friendly neighbors to the north. And I am the manager of international student recruitment at the University of Toronto. I just popped my QR code onto the slide as a way to contact me if you have questions about the University of Toronto or questions about studying in Canada. I truly am happy to help you with any information that you might like to have. And that's something that I really enjoy as part of my role, is getting to visit countries all over the world to talk about the educational opportunities that we are able to provide in Canada. So we'll go ahead and get started. I know there's a lot of information that you get to access tonight. My goal is to make sure that you get the details you need about Canada, also to learn some fun facts too, and to have some great takeaways. As someone who has attended and given a lot of presentations, I'm a big fan of takeaways, because I think if you can boil it down to just a couple of things that you can maybe share with someone later or remind yourself about in the future, those are great ways to keep ideas fresh. So really, the kind of some takeaways about Canada that I do want to impress upon you right at the start is that it's an opportunity to get a great education that's very highly regarded around the world. We're also a great option for students coming from the US because we're not too far, but we're maybe just that little bit far away enough that you get that experience, that international experience. And then I do want to highlight a little bit the cost. Really great option if you're looking for a high quality education, but maybe a little bit less than a private school might cost, or going out of state might cost. So we have some great options and opportunities for you there as well. So please feel free, if you have questions, to pop them into the chat. That's what I'm here for. If there's anything you want to know a little bit more about, if there's something I said that doesn't quite make sense, feel free to put that in the chat and I'm happy to help. So let's talk first about quality of life. Why Canada is known for offering such a great quality of life to not only Canadian citizens, but also those who come visit, stay, work, or study. Now, Canada is considered to be a great destination for people to pursue their post-secondary education because of the nation's very highly recognized quality of life. And we have a great quality of life in Canada. Much like the United States, we're a very welcoming country. We have access to some really great services and opportunities. But there are definitely some things that make Canada a little bit different from the United States, a little bit unique. As you can probably hear, you may also detect a bit of an accent. I'm always told that you can hear that. I don't hear it, but you probably do. And there's some things about Canada that are a little bit special. Now, we are a much smaller country than the United States. Our population is about the same as California, but actually our landmass is a little bit larger. So we're very much spread across the country. Most Canadians do live near the United States border. I know I did myself. I grew up in Windsor, Ontario, which is right across from the city of Detroit. You can see Detroit pretty much from my house in Windsor. So that's how close our two countries really can be. But on the screen, you see some, fun things that Canadians are known for. If there are some other kind of stereotypes about Canada that come to mind, feel free to pop them in the chat. I love to hear them. And then I also have some Canadian trivia questions for you. Curious if anyone can tell me what a double-double is. So feel free to pop in the chat if you happen to know what a double-double is. Another trivia question I have for you is what is a loonie? And then my third Canadian trivia question for you is, what do we call soda in Canada? Yeah, Danielle's got it. So a $1 coin. Yeah, so Robin, we do have a toonie. So a toonie is a $2 coin, and a loonie is a $1 coin. So the loonie was named after the loon, which is a very common Canadian bird in our cottage areas and territories. So that's why it's called a loonie. And I see a direct message here, someone noting that they are a Canadian, so they know that the answer is that a double double is a coffee. So it's a very specific type of coffee. It's a coffee that has 2 creams and 2 sugars. So that's why it's called a double double. And it was coined by Tim Hortons, which is it's like our equivalent of Dunkin' Donuts. And I know that there are a couple in the States as well. And then the last question is, what do we call soda? We call it pop. It's just something a little bit different. So I think that's one of a good way to kind of think about Canada and US is that we're very similar. We speak the same language, but there's some subtle differences. And that's, I think, what you're going to see a little bit in our education systems as well. And I'll talk a little bit about those differences in education, but I also wanted to highlight what we're known for in our education as well. So we're also known for some things in terms of your quality of life. We have a really great job market in Canada. The economy is strong. Of course, we have a lot of great trade with the United States. As well, we're known for being quite affordable, having a lot of economic stability, being family friendly, as well as political stability. And then safety is a big component as well. Again, that's part of being a much smaller country, as well as having a really great healthcare system that international students do have access to. So those are some things that make Canada well known all around the world and considered to be one of the top countries in the world for quality of life. Now, in terms of the quality of education, we're very much known for our post-secondary institutions, and they are primarily public. So whereas there are systems I know within the United States where you have private universities and colleges, our university and college system is primarily public. So that means the Canadian government does oversee the standards of our education system, as well as fund our public colleges and universities. One thing I want to make sure I clarify is the difference between a university and a college in Canada. A college in Canada is the equivalent of a community college in the United States. So universities and colleges are quite different in that typically universities provide 4-year undergraduate degrees, whereas colleges typically offer diploma programs. So both are great. Both are a wonderful education system. It just depends on what you are looking for in terms of your education. And tonight we're going to focus specifically on the Canadian university system. And the Canadian university systems, like I said, offer educational degrees. So these are typically 4-year programs, and they're very well recognized all around the world. So we like to say that a Canadian education is very portable. If you want to go back to the United States with a degree from Canada, you can. If you want to travel around the world or apply for a job and an employer abroad, a Canadian education is very well recognized regardless of which institution you attended. And because of that, we have a huge number of international students coming to Canada every single year. We have a lot coming from the United States as well as elsewhere around the world. And our numbers have jumped quite significantly from 2013, where we had a little over 200,000 international students, to last year, where we had over 800,000 international students. So the numbers do, have gone up quite a bit, record-breaking numbers of international students and valid study permit holders at the end of 2022. And part of the reason that students come to Canada is because we do offer safe and diverse campuses that are located in diverse communities. And with fewer institutions across Canada, it also means that our institutions tend to be a little bit bigger. So in Canada, a small university campus is about 4,000 to 6,000 students. A mid-sized university campus is about 10,000 to 15,000 students. And a large university campus can have anywhere from 25,000, 30,000 students or more. So University of Toronto, where I work, has a little over 70,000 undergraduate students. So it really does depend on the school and the institution, how big it is. Now, within this system, our universities generally fall into one of these three categories. So there are medical, doctor, research universities. These typically have a larger student population and offer a broad range of undergraduate and graduate programs. Then we have comprehensive universities, which are typically mid-sized to large in population. These tend to offer a significant amount of research activity, as well as undergraduate and graduate programs. And then we have some universities that are primarily undergraduate. So they're typically small to mid-sized student populations, and they largely focus on undergraduate education with relatively few graduate programs. So a big part of studying in Canada, and the reason why a lot of students are interested in coming to Canada, is because of the academic offerings. There's a lot of flexibility, and so students often have the opportunity to mix and match their program areas. The programs tend to be rigorous, so you're going to get a great education regardless of the program. And we also have a standardized secondary school curriculum in each province. So that typically means that every high school student in Canada is roughly learning the same information so that the time they come to university, they're all ready to start at that same level. And Canadian secondary education is really great in preparing students for university. So we're looking for students who are also meeting that standard as well. Students looking to study business and sciences typically are required to have strong competency in mathematics and physical science. And sometimes students will typically have 2 years of these sciences. So 2 years of physics, 2 years of chemistry, especially if they intend on pursuing a science degree, and certainly 4 years of advanced math. Now, once students get to university, there's a lot of flexibility in the types of courses and programs that they can opt to enroll in. And students can combine different programs together in one degree. And the nice part is that they don't have to choose their programs right away. So oftentimes, students will have at least one full year to determine which program they'd like to pursue. And then in addition to the program that they're studying, there's a lot of hands-on learning in Canada that students can add on to their Canadian education. So many institutions offer cooperative education, internships, research opportunities, and study abroad programs. And many of these opportunities are paid positions or for credit, where students are able to gain relevant work experience in between school terms. Students are allowed to work on and off campus during their studies, so that can be a great way to offset some of your tuition. And then after you graduate, you're eligible to apply for a postgraduate work permit, which grants you up to 3 years of work visa. So a lot of international students do like that option. If they're enjoying their time in Canada, you can apply to stay a little bit longer. Now, what does a co-op program look like? It depends on the university and it depends on the program, but typically a co-op is 2 to 4 work terms, and these are paid positions. And usually how it works is you alternate your work term with your study term. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a visual here. It might look like taking your first year of studying and preparing for your job. And then in the fall of your second year, instead of going back to class, you actually work for a semester. Then you go back to class for the winter and then maybe work for the summer. So you're always sort of alternating your work with your school. Now, a professional experience year could be taking a full year or up to 16 months off of school or off of your coursework to work one single job for that time. So this can be a really great opportunity to network, really hone in on a specific skill, and it's typical for programs like engineering. And average earnings can be anywhere from 35,000, 85,000. University of Toronto last year, our student who earned the largest amount of money, I should say, salary was over 124,000 at professional experience year opportunity in Silicon Valley. So you can also work abroad. And I say that not because I think money is the most important thing, but I know that education can be expensive. So this can be a really good way to pay for tuition, but also get some good experience that will set you up after university. So we really believe in providing students with opportunities to gain that experience. So you're not only learning in the classroom, but you're getting that hands-on work opportunity too. And speaking of outside of the classroom, student life is a big part of your experience. So it's not just about what you're learning in school, it's making sure that you're feeling supported, that you're having a great time at university, that you are learning and engaging, and that you feel safe. So there's many ways for students to get involved and build community. That can be through making friends in your residence, through leadership opportunities, clubs, and organizations. And then our universities also offer student supports like academic advising, accessibility services, career centers, and health and wellness. As well, rest assured that they are part of safe campuses that have safety mechanisms in place for students' well-being. So mental health and wellness is a big piece of the experience and something that we support at our Canadian institutions. So there is a lot of assistance for students to make sure that they're happy, healthy, and enjoying their time at school. So I do see one question has come in. Do all students incorporate a co-op program or work program during a 4-year degree program in Canada? That's a great question. So no, not all students incorporate this. It's typically an option. There are some universities that have some programs that require a co-op or an internship be completed before the student graduate, but typically it's an option. So it's not required. It's not something you have to do, but if it's something you would like to do, it's often available. Okay, so let's talk about tuition. On average, the average cost per year of a Canadian university in US dollars, including room and board, is about 40,000 US dollars a year. So again, if you're looking out of state, if you're looking private, this is a pretty good price point compared to some other options in the United States and around the world. Keeping in mind that our education system is a very, very high quality. So you're going to get an excellent education for a reasonable price. If you are a domestic student, so that means if you're a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident of Canada, you're typically eligible for an international fee tuition waiver. That means you would pay the same price as a Canadian citizen, and the Canadian government does fund the majority of the cost of that. So if you're a Canadian or if you have a parent that's a Canadian, keep that in mind. It can be very, very affordable to come and study in Canada for your education. You will see a little note on the bottom of the screen that tuition does vary significantly depending on the university and program. So some programs at some universities start at about $10,000 a year, whereas some universities it's about 50 to 55,000 US dollars a year. So just make sure to check with each individual institution. Do you see another question in the chat, which is how important are extracurricular activities in the admission process, and same for sports? Really great question. Most programs and most universities do not consider extracurricular activities or sports as part of the application process. So I say most because there are some programs that may take that into consideration, but generally speaking, Canadian institutions focus primarily on academics. And sports, while involvement in extracurriculars like sports could be part of an extracurricular list when you might be applying for a specific program, we don't have admission based on athletics. So you can't be admitted to university based on athletics. You can try out for a team once you've been admitted to a university, but not before. So I hope that answers that question, but feel free to let me know if you have more. So scholarships and awards are also generally available across Canadian universities, and they're typically based on academic merit. So some institutions may also offer needs-based awards, and most Canadian universities also accept the FAFSA student loans. So let's make sure that we talk about admission requirements before you go. They are a little bit different. Again, we focus primarily on merit as opposed to other areas. Recommendation letters, essays, lists of extracurricular activities, they're typically not required. But again, some programs may require that supplemental information, or they may be looking for a personal profile, a video interview, or a portfolio or audition. But the majority of programs are going to be focusing on your academic performance. So if you're a US high school student or you're completing the US high school diploma, we're going to be looking at your transcripts, your GPA, your prerequisite courses, and then if English isn't your first language, we may need you to provide proof of English facility. Now, most Canadian institutions have implemented a test optional policy for students applying for fall 2024, but it does depend on the specific institution. So it's not across the board in Canada, just like it's not across the board in the United States. So just make sure to check each institution individually because it will change. And if you're applying to university, it's possible that AP exam results may be eligible for transfer credit. Same thing goes for IB final exams, French baccalaureate, college level courses. Every institution's a little bit different, but you could potentially have a lighter first year if you have some of these credits. So that's something worth looking into. So if you're thinking you might want to study in Canada, what does the application process look like? Well, typically the process is available online, and most Canadian universities are not on the Common Application. We actually have a two-step process in Canada. So typically the initial step is applying directly to the university. And then once you've submitted that application, once we know who you are, what you want to apply for, what you're studying, you will be asked to submit your transcripts once we've received your application. So unlike the Common Application, you don't kind of put everything together all at once, get it prepared and send it off. It's a multi-step process. So your application's kind of never complete in the sense that you're always sending transcripts, always updating your application, and always kind of in touch with us about what's next. Now, if you're applying to a university in Ontario, we do have the Ontario Universities Application Center. This is where you can apply for multiple Ontario universities all on one application. And British Columbia has a similar system, which is called Education Planner BC, where you can apply for multiple universities in BC. If you're applying to universities outside of Ontario or British Columbia, you apply directly to the university. Our timeline's kind of a little bit of everywhere. We don't have, November 1st, May 1st, but typically applications open September. They might stay open till January, February, March, depending on the school. And then we request documents from November until April, again, depending on the institution. Our admissions decisions can come out anytime between January until June. So this is something worth noting, is that some of our university decisions do come out after May 1st. So it's always a good idea to apply early if possible. Now, there's more resources available on each of our Canadian institution websites as well. There are great resources on these websites that you see listed here on the screen. So if you have any questions, either for me about the University of Toronto, studying in Canada, I'm more than happy to answer those questions now. I will also put my QR code back on the screen so that if you'd like to stay in touch or get information about the University of Toronto, you can do that there. I'll just check the chat. Can I show the resources list again? Absolutely. Let me just back up. There we go. So thank you so much for joining tonight. I hope that you enjoy your next sessions. I'm happy to take questions for even just another moment. I see some coming in. do Quebec universities have a similar process? It's similar in the sense that you would apply directly to the university. They would be looking at your high school transcripts and your specific documents. So it's a pretty similar system. And Nicholas has asked at U of T which programs are restricted and what are the GPA cutoffs for some of those? So by restricted, I think maybe you mean competitive, but you can let me know if I'm misunderstanding. We don't, yes, okay, perfect. We don't have specific cutoffs, but I can tell you that engineering is one of the most competitive programs at U of T. I would say a competitive GPA from the US high school system, we would want to have at least a 3.5 the minimum, but probably closer to 4 would be considered competitive. So hopefully that helps. Are SAT, ACT scores required for the application? Depends on the university. So some Canadian institutions do require it. Many are test optional. At the University of Toronto, and I'll just flip to that slide as well. Just realized I didn't show my U of T slide. At the University of Toronto, if you are applying to programs other than engineering, it's test optional. So you can submit scores if you have them, but you don't have to. If you're applying to engineering and you have taken tests, you must submit those results. Any other questions that I can help with? Okay, great. Well, then I will give you a minute back of your time so that you can maybe have a little break before the next session. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. I hope that this was helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and enjoy the rest of your night. Take care, everyone.